Bloody hell. I'm here with Gary, as always. This is episode 2 of season 2. If you weren't here last week, go and listen to episode 1. It's a cracker. But how are you, Gary, anyway? You all good?
I'm good. As always, mate. Good.
Glad.
Not bad. Not elated. Just good. Happy. When I say I'm happy, I'm
Reasonable.
reasonable. I'm getting notifications as we do this podcast on from Sky Bet, so my emotions might go up and down as we go through this.
Yeah, if you suddenly he's talking about something that he's really excited about, and he goes, "Oh, fuck's sake, you prick."
Yeah.
We might cut
you
that
hear
bit
it,
out, but like you never know. It's
if
quite entertaining when we see Gary sort of like, getting pissed off by teams that you don't follow.
well, just to get us kicked off straight away.
Yeah.
Notts County playing Sutton United currently as we're recording this, which obviously I've backed Notts County, thinking bottom of the league, surely they'll have a bit of. This will be the platform for the new manager to build from a tough spell. But no, after 6 minutes we're getting beat. They then equalised on 13 minutes and then conceded again on 16 minutes. So the joys. This isn't an advocation for gambling.
This is basically saying
don't
gamble. It's not worth it.
Definitely. Well, it's not worth it at the minute. It's not worth backing Notts County, but we'll see.
There's a couple of shocking results just to touch on that in League 2 at the moment, with Forest Green beating Wrexham as well, and Sutton United beating Notts County. So that's the two bottom teams winning.
Yeah.
I mean, it's early.
And
it's barely gone 20 minutes yet, so like...
Yeah.
3 goals in Notts County, Sutton United in 20 minutes. That's a cracker, but yeah.
Yeah. Fantastic for anybody who hasn't backed Wrexham or Notts County, but never mind. How are you, Matt?
Yeah, decent. All good, mate. Been plodding along. Work and that, but yeah, pretty knackered. If anyone doesn't know, I did a 24-hour gaming thing at the weekend, and
Oh yes,
nigh on killed me off. Well, I'm still here, so yeah, and I managed to do it. So yeah.
So how much did you raise, and for which charity?
So
because we can plug it on this.
Our group raised over £2,200. I want to say.
Insert clap noise.
And it was for Special Effect. So they're a charity that like help disabled people or physically enabled people play computer games. So if they haven't got the use of their arms and things like this, they provide equipment so they can play.
I've seen that, and it's pretty. I've seen clips of a guy who plays Call of Duty, and it's determined on where he breathes into a certain part of the console.
Yeah,
it's amazing.
So I was speaking to the guy who runs it because he came to see us at the end of our stint, and he was saying that he was down in Cornwall or something. There was a bloke who's lost all movement in his arms and legs and just wants to play Minecraft with his 5-year-old son. So they've designed something for them so he can control it with his eyes. So he just has to move his eyes and it'll control it so he can play Minecraft with his 5-year-old son. And that's pretty cool.
That's amazing. You think certain things where you just think, oh no, you can't do it. And I suppose that physically enabled, you'd think, oh, it's nah, you can't do that. And there's just a certain defiance to it, just to be nah, no, I want to play it too, so I'm going to figure this out.
Yeah, exactly.
That's really cool.
And that's where the charity comes in. They do everything, they pay for everything, so no matter what situation anyone's in, they'll make sure they help them out.
Is there anywhere people can still donate?
I don't know if the donation's still open, but yeah, check out Special Effects page. You might be able to donate directly from there. I'll double check if my donation's still open.
We'll tweet it out after. Direct people to the charity because it's a good cause.
Indeed.
It's worth gaming for 24 hours.
It was a struggle, mate. I'll tell you that. It was fine until about 3 a.m. in the morning, and then I started to flag between 3 a.m. and 5. It was sort of getting to the point where you're I need to do something to stay awake, but my brain capacity is so low that I can't play anything that's taxing. You know what I mean? But
So what
once
was
you get
the what?
past 5, 6 in the morning, you're sort of like you can see the end. So you're like, yeah, now I can sort of now you wake up a bit. So yeah, for those 3 hours there, 3, 4 hours, it was FIFA because like FIFA is literally mind numbing. I didn't care if I was losing. I didn't care what I was doing. I was just like this, like mindlessly playing.
So so was there a rules to the games that you could play, or was it just as long as you were gaming for the full period?
As long as you were gaming, it was fine. Yeah.
So you basically lived out the life of a anybody who's not in work and is probably in studying, pretty much from leaving school
They might sleep
into
though.
getting a
Like
full
that.
time
That's the
job.
only
Oh, that's
thing.
true. That's
Also,
true.
one big thing, I had, well, I pretty much had no caffeine.
Yeah. Do you know what it is? Weirdly, I don't know why, but I've seen on my social media streams loads of advertisement for a chewing gum, which is a caffeine chewing gum
Oh really?
designed for gamers.
Oh wow. No, I
So it's
didn't.
it's
I just drank loads of
bizarre.
water. I thought I went through like 12 bottles of water. Like I thought, like I was pissing all the time, but like at the end of the day, like I probably felt better for it rather than drinking like 80 cups of coffee or something, and like
It's the
having
most
heart
you drink.
palpitations or something like that.
No, well, good on you, man. And it's good that he's raised that much as well. But if your link's still open, and we'll tweet that out, and we'll tweet out the charity name as well,
Yeah, for
just
definite.
in case anyone's feeling generous. But fair play, nice deed, man,
Yeah,
nice deed. But should we go on to some football news?
yeah. Let's go. So football news. As always, the segment. If you're here last week, we explained all this, but yeah, we're going to a bit of football news from I say around the world. I think today's more of a bit more close to home. But yeah,
Well, you see, it's not really. Yeah, it's close in that in the country. It is
yeah, that's what I meant.
for
Yeah.
once. Yeah, yeah.
Whereas my ones last week were all over the place, weren't they? So
Well, mine's pretty much. I don't want to say breaking news, but it came out today. And you're gonna have to indulge us, mate. You're gonna have to indulge us because this. If you haven't listened to series one, you'll know that I'm not a massive advocate for the Premier League, and it's not just because I'm not in the Premier League and blah blah blah. There's loads of different reasons why I listen to some of the other episodes. However, this is probably one of the things where it's just case in point for not liking the top of the pyramid, if you like, just because of seeing that. So Everton had their points deduction earlier in the season, which dropped them into a relegation battle, still arguably in there as well. But then today they've had their points deduction. Um, they had an appeal for that points deduction, and it's been amended. So then they've had only 6 points deducted. So now they're out of the relegation zone, and it's dropped Luton back into it, and 4 points adrift. And I just think it's just mad. Like how first, if they appealed it, why did they apply the 10 points straight away? So this is me just making a point. I'm not directing this question to you now, Matt, but like it's just farcical because Everton's obviously then changed it, in regardless what managers will say um, about mentality of players and not looking at the league table. It's rubbish because they have to. They will
yeah, yeah,
understand how many points they need to get. They'll be looking over the shoulders, looking around what's going on in the league, and then they'll focus then on the games in front of them. But I just think, how crap is that for everyone involved? Because fair enough, Everton have breached it. I'm not trying to defend what they've done. Like they should be penalised, but they should be penalised when they know that that is the full outcome. Like
yeah,
you
yeah.
can't just start adding points and removing points and putting them up at the table, putting them back
Yeah,
down the table.
what they should have
It's
done. Yeah,
ridiculous.
no, I agree with that. So what they really should have done is say it's a suspended 10 point deduction subject to appeal, and then applied whatever come out of the appeal. So applied the 6 point deduction now, essentially, rather than having 10 points and then playing like you got 10 points deducted, and then all of a sudden no, you've only got six now. You know what I mean?
Okay.
It just needs a
No,
bit
no.
more. It just tidying up. Really, it's like what they should do is say this is your punishment. Are you going to appeal it? Yes or no? If it's a yes, then it's a suspended punishment until the appeal's gone through and there's a decision that's made, and then you either get 10 points or 6 points or whatever, you know,
Like the only
rather than
thing I was
just
thinking,
applying it immediately.
but because the only thing I'm thinking is they have to do it because they want it to have an outcome before the end of the season. But then I'm just thinking if they've probably that's why they've done it. So then they retrospectively remove points or maybe add points on to whatever, depending on the circumstances. But I don't understand why they don't just go say to them like you're saying. It's a 10-point deduction suspended upon appeal, but it will be applied to this current season's end of result. So
Well, yeah,
if because then it stops them appealing and just dragging the court
yeah.
process out because it's in their
Essentially, they
interest
could
to kind of
say
appeal it.
it's suspended subject to one appeal. That appeal will be resolved by the end of the season, and those points deductions, if any, will be applied at this season, even if that's like, even if it's the last game. Like, you think,
Yeah,
yeah,
but the stupid thing was everybody outside of well, I said everybody. There's no even kind of exception to it or caveat to it. Like everybody knew the points deduction at 10 points was ridiculous. So it's almost they've done it on purpose, knowing that they were going to end up knocking it down, so they
yeah,
get a higher points deduction overall. But then I'm just thinking for Luton as well, it's just
yeah. Like, is there an argument there if Luton go down by 4 points, let's say,
I
above
think
Everton, like, well, say 3 points there. Say Luton get relegated by 3 points and Everton are 17th, let's say. Have they got an argument there that they could look for compensation and stuff? You don't know. Well,
I know what you're saying. Like
it's
I'm not
speculative
saying,
because it's a really weird scenario that has to happen.
but it's just ridiculous, man. Because when I say about the mentality, like there's Luton who went on a really good run. Like they've lost a couple now, but then they went on a really good run, and then it's all been for like nothing, and then that's gonna weigh on them a bit. And I just feel like now Rob Edwards' his kind of mentality going into games has now shifted because they had a little bit of they had a game in hand and what a level on points. And I know there's other teams still around them, but now the 4 points adrift. It's just like that they're going to have to approach games differently the way they were when Everton didn't have that deduction.
Yeah,
So now it's I just think it's farcical, it's and then it kind of begs the question how, and I know it's because there's more cases, but still, how Chelsea of getting away with it, how Man City have gotten away with it, how Forest haven't had anything applied to them. It's just embarrassing. And what we're going to find is that the three team like what's likely going to happen is the three teams who have been promoted this last season are going to get relegated, and the three teams that got relegated are going to go back up, and it just goes to the point that the Premier League don't care about any of the English tiers. They're just bothered about them and the
and
top six,
they're bothered
and that's
about
why I hate it.
they're bothered about their money makers, aren't they? That's essentially, and unfortunately, man, two of those teams that we mentioned that probably are quite being scrutinised by all this are two of the six money makers for the Premier League. So it makes you think: are they going to get the same treatment as Nottingham Forest and Everton? Time will tell. But that's where that independent panel would have probably would do something, unless, yeah, I don't know. I don't know. Like, I feel like there's a lot of naivety in English football in the sense that we're never corrupt and we're the only league ever that's never been corrupt and things like this, when every other league on the planet has match fixing scandals, corruption, everything like this, and like paying referees and all this stuff. And then for some reason England doesn't happen. No, that's just not a thing.
Yeah,
It's so naive. Like it is so naive. Like, yeah, that could be a
but
whole
just
fucking topic, that. But yeah,
yeah, and for the last part of the news, it just makes you think like if because it is having an impact where it's likely that the same three teams are going to go down, and with the exception of Luton reaching the top tier for the first time in God knows how long, like I just feel like as a championship team who's trying to aspire to get back to the Premier League, what's the point? What's the point in being in that league? It's
Well,
pointless.
it's the first time in a while that all three teams potentially could go back down again. I don't think that's
But
happened for a long time. Like,
it hasn't. But I mean, like it's like the indication of what's happening, because if you look at the seasons before,
yeah, I think also the three teams that have come up, so Sheffield United, Burnley, and Luton, were very. I think it's a different season in the fact that all three of them were never really equipped for the Premier League again.
you
Burnley,
say
you
that
could
though.
argue, but because they were relegated, but they changed their team drastically, and they were playing a
But they
different
won the
style of
championship with
football.
like 100 plus points, and teams who have done that have normally ended up in previous, like Sunderland being one of them. Who else was the other one? With the exception of Burnley, there's
Reading.
other teams. Reading, they finished mid-table in the Premier League the following season.
Mm.
But and I know the game's changed and the way it's played's changed, so that's a part of the factor. But the biggest shift since then to now is economically. That's the only thing that's
Yeah,
really changed.
a lot
And
of
I
the
just feel
teams
like
though.
I don't see the point in why clubs are aspiring to be there other than financial. It's nothing else.
Yeah, you have to see like what a lot of these clubs are doing. Like the ones that are happily. I think Fulham did it a couple of times. They got promoted. Oh no, they spent a load of money. Well, there was a couple of teams that got promoted, didn't spend anything, got relegated again, and then went back up again, and then spent some money to try and stay back in. But then they
Mm,
sort of got the parachute payments for getting relegated, and then went back up again, and then they got all the TV money again, and then like
mm,
actually it's quite beneficial to go up and down a couple of times to sort of like level yourself.
mm.
But then like is that unfair on the teams that are in the championship that are aspiring to get there, that these teams come down and then they've just got their bankrolled to go back up again?
And it skews the league because
It
it has a
does,
knock
yeah.
on effect. And look, I'm speaking from the perspective of a club that had a lot of money and financially
Spunked up the wall.
spent themselves out and overspent. So I've got that as a bit of a perspective as well, and that's why I've got a little bit of leeway with something the way they are and the way we're approaching the championship and stuff now, because I don't want that to happen again. Because I want my club, which leads us on to the next bit of news, which you're going to talk us through.
Yeah, so the next bit of news that I want to touch on is the stuff that's going on at Torquay at the moment. So Torquay United, if no one knows, they have been placed in administration. They are in the National League South. So this is a team that historically have been there or thereabouts in the bottom league or bottom two divisions of the Football League for a long time, haven't they? They dropped
Famously supported by Helen Chamberlain of Soccer
indeed from
AM.
Soccer AM, yeah, and they dropped out of the Football League a while back. Went down to the National League South. Went back up to the National League last year and just been relegated back down to the National League South now. They've got a big fan base, decent sized stadium. They're a big name at that level. Bear in mind, like Yeovil are playing at that level, Scunthorpe are at that level as well. So
Mm,
there's a
mm.
few. It's sort of like a similar thing was happening to Scunthorpe until they got bought out earlier this year. But their chairman has decided that he no longer wants to or can fund the club. He's decided he wants to walk away completely and leave them with all the debt and place them into administration. I mean, it's fucked up, really, isn't it? Like, I think it's wild that someone who's responsible for a football club can say, I can't fund this anymore, I'm just going to walk away, and then just clears his net. Like, that's it, I've had enough. Like, the debt's all yours, you deal with it. All that mess that I've left you in, I'm just walking away from this. And then he's not burdened with anything. You know what I mean?
Mm.
It says he's gonna lose about £5 million. But I mean, he's a guy that I think in the past, this guy has sort of run couple of. He used to be in Speedway, and he's run a couple of Speedway teams into the ground and taken all their money away, and then just
Asset stripped it.
sold asset stripped, sold the stadiums, sold that for developers and things like this. So it's not. It's again that fit and proper test thing, and I think he's been there since 2016. I'm wondering
Hmm.
where they were in 2016.
It just,
Because
it's
you have to
just
think,
crap.
if they're in the Football League, is that a. Yeah, so they were 2016, sold the club. Um, I'm trying to see where they were in 2016. But it's an interesting thing, is it? I don't know what your thoughts are. The whole thing.
I,
I mean, we touched on it before, haven't we? But
know, like the fit and proper.
hmm,
Well, the thing with that is like we we've always said like the lower down the tiers you go, the more ruthless they are. Like the governing bodies, if you like. So the English
yeah,
Football League and the FA and all them numpties. I just I'm trying to see it like one hand and understand if somebody's gone bust, like and they've got no money, they they can't run a football club anymore. Like what what can you do? The only thing I would say is that in any purchase of a club there should be an inbuilt exit strategy
yeah, there should be.
because just to and fair enough there'll have to be caveats and stuff to it, but you cannot just have somebody go, oh, by the way, I can't afford this club. They shouldn't get to the point where they can't physically fund it anymore. It shouldn't you shouldn't be able to get to that point where the club has a chance, an institution has a chance of going bust because of a single person's mismanagement of it. And then also just have no implication to that club just disappearing.
Yeah,
It's just crackers, man. And although I'm not like massively up on Torquay's affairs and stuff like that, I know they've always kind of struggled, not necessarily financially, but they've never like pushed up into League One, into the Championship, those kind of things. They are relatively, with due respect, like a smaller club, but even still, it's still like got a fan base. It's still got people who work in that club. It's like it'll affect the area, it'll affect the local economy. It's just ridiculous how like there's this many owners and it's happening this frequently, and it's just nothing gets done. The only people who get impacted are the players, the people who work at the club, and the fans. And that's
yeah.
it. And
It's
they've got no say in that owner. Do you
yeah,
know what I mean? Like unless it's fan owned, which you have seen, like Wrexham, for example. We talked about them just with them being shit this tonight because they're getting beat off bottom of the league. Well, one of the bottom of the league teams, but like they're probably one of the examples where you look at it and think how dire and destitute the situation was, and their fans kind of pulled them out, but they desperately needed an owner, so that kind of skews your judgment. So it's just crap, man. Like they shouldn't be allowed to get anywhere near the situation they are, and they shouldn't be able to leave without a full exit strategy at the point of purchase.
yeah, and that's the thing, is the fact that he's just gone. I can't afford to do it, so I'm giving it to the administrators. I'm going to walk away from this, and it's just like great.
Mm.
So you just got no remorse whatsoever, and you're just going to walk away from it.
He says he's lost 5 million. I'm sure it's nowhere near that.
Yeah, and they're going to get 10 points deducted now. They're currently 11th, so they're going to drop to 4 points above the relegation zone. So potentially going into the Southern Football League after that, and that's where you start getting like part time and things like this. So fingers crossed
But
that doesn't happen for Torquay United fans' sake. But yeah,
criminal. It should
it's
be criminal. It
it
should be
should be
criminal.
it should be
It
very
probably is.
criminal. The whole thing is should be criminal, especially like what we heard about East Thurrock in
Mm.
earlier in the season, where the chairman decided just to,
Sell it to Persimmon Homes.
well, pretty much, yeah, he just went, yeah, just, well, he said there was old debts in the club, and then just with no actual evidence that there was old debts and they were financially quite fine, and then just closed it.
Unreal.
Oh yeah, it's wild. But that in non-league, that happens quite a lot. You get, because there isn't a fit and proper test in non-league.
Mm.
Um, maybe there should be. You get a lot of teams that sort of just disappear willy nilly for no reason, or
Well,
get run into the ground and things like this. Especially
well,
because
think,
there's a high value in non football grounds, because they're quite a big area, and like if you see like a struggling non-league team, a developer could go in there, or someone with that development mind, get control of the ground, sell it off to developers, say it's going to benefit the football club to build them a new. The developers are going to build them a new facility down the road, and then it just never happens, and then they just get turfed out of the town and then stay out of it forever. But yeah, that happens. There's also one more thing to touch on as well.
Hmm.
Same sort of thing, but Nuneaton Borough also went out of business recently as well for the, I think it's the fourth time in, no, the third time in like 15 years.
Sounds like an insurance job. It's like a local
Yeah,
takeaway.
it's wild, but they
Burned
weren't,
down.
yeah, they weren't paying their rent on the ground, and then the people who own the ground kicked them out, and they've said any any new version of the club, because obviously they've previously done this and it's same as happened again and again and again. Um, any new version of the club will not be allowed to play at the ground anymore. But yeah,
Oh well.
but yeah, it's wild.
Another
Non-league
example.
football is all over the place, to be honest, mate.
Well, on that bombshell, mate, let's go for a quick short break and then we'll dive into this week's topic.
Yes, we shall. And welcome back from that quick short break. How was it? Have a breather?
It was quick and short, just how
Yeah.
we like it. As your missus always says, "Ew,
Quick
ew."
and short.
Well,
Gives you time to
mate,
make a
let's.
cup of tea afterwards, doesn't it? So
Yeah, no, double time. Well, let's not keep everybody in suspense, mate. Let's tell everybody what we're looking at this week.
yeah. So our main topic of focus this week is, we're going into Scottish football. Don't switch off if
Yeah,
everyone's
yeah.
listening. Like it is genuinely interesting. So we're going to
I was
talk
going to say
about
all of
like
our
we're go-
Spotify analytics and it said
yeah, like
minute X.
Scottish football. What? No, we're going to talk around. So when we grew up in the 90s, Scottish football was actually quite good. Could you argue? Like the Scottish football, Celtic and Rangers were quite competitive in
I would
Europe.
argue it was good, yeah.
They had some good players in their teams. Um, even the early 2000s, there was some good players in Celtic and Rangers teams, and we're just going to discuss like our thoughts and feelings around that era of Scottish football, but also what we sort of think happened and why nowadays, if you see Celtic or Rangers came up against Liverpool, I think it was a couple of seasons ago in the Champions League, and they lost 7-1. Like in the late 90s, mid 90s, and the early 2000s, that was unthinkable, really, wasn't it? To lose that, like that would have been a competitive fixture. So yeah, that's the sort of thing we're going to talk around, and I think it's quite interesting because obviously, if anyone thinks about Scottish football now, they just go, "Well, it's just dog shit," which arguably it isn't. There's just a real lack of funding up there compared to England, and I think that's the two leagues have taken different trajectories, could we say? But yeah,
Yeah, I think yeah. So I think the first and foremost is getting into the nostalgia of it.
oh, 100%.
So I loved Scottish football back in the day, man. Like I remember it was Scotch Corner on Sky Sports. I used to watch that more than I probably watched like Match of the Day at the time because it was class. Like the I mean the main reason for me really enjoying Scottish football was Paul Gascoigne. Like
Oh,
as a
Gazza,
kid,
yeah.
that was like yeah, that was one of the players that he was just an icon, money. So I kind of followed him, and then that led us into Rangers. And oh, for the listeners, I've been told to pause and fill the dead air because Matt has gone into his encyclopedia of shirts and pulled out a Gascoigne shirt. Probably not an encyclopedia; it's a library of shirts. What am I saying?
There we
What
go.
a shirt it is! It's a collared number. It's a home shirt with white patches over the shoulder and red, white, and blue trim, and a great sponsor in McEwen's Lager, made by Adidas.
That's what we're talking about.
Tremendous shirts. So tremendous retro shirts, tremendous retro players, nostalgia. But like, truthfully, I used to play Sunday League as I was getting ready to go out because you start off really early. I remember being really early on in the morning. It was either, now here's my memory tricking us now. So it was either on just before I played football or just after I'd come back from football. So it was either first thing in the morning or it was midday. I can't remember when it used to air, but I remember watching it and having me Sunday League kit on and just loving it. Like I was, and the next thing that we're probably going to start to talk about, other than how great the football shirts were, fit like kits and stuff, is the level of quality in the league at the time. Like, so
Yeah.
we can probably say like it was in its pomp. What to us as like a foreigner perspective from '90s, late '90s, well '90s, early '90s, sorry, into early 2000s. I would say
Yeah,
that's
I would say
probably like
so.
the
Then
era of Scottish football.
you're looking when it gets closer to the 2010s. You're looking it started to drift away from that a little bit.
I mean, I've already touched on one player that I loved, but I was more affiliated to Rangers than any other. Like, I didn't really have a massive like club or like we talked about last week, a second club or anything. I would probably say I was leaned more to Rangers because I liked their kits a bit more, and plus they had Paul Gascoigne playing for them. But then you had like the legend, who's probably the best pundit out there and talk show or football talk show host in Ali McCoist, amazing.
Yeah.
Brian Laudrup, Andy Gorham, because he was an absolute psychopath, like most terrifying goalkeeper there's ever been, probably. And just like Goff, like there's so many players that I remember
Yeah,
and being
you have to think as well, like loads at Rangers, and then you have to think of what the pulling power of that league as well, because Paulo Di Canio didn't just
mm,
come straight to the Premier League. What people don't remember is that from Milan he went actually and played for Celtic for a year before moving to the Premier League and Sheffield Wednesday. So it's like
mm.
he went to the Scottish League. Like you think, like even Gattuso played in the Scottish League. Pierre Van Hooijdonk played in the Scottish League before going to Nottingham
Arteta,
Forest. Arteta, yeah,
Arteta.
yeah,
There's a lot of like foreign like imports, like you say. Well, De Boer. I mean, we've talked about the Loudrop brothers, but then you've got De Boer as well.
hmm
Like really big names, like, and you might look back now and like people think about De Boer and like the management and stuff and that side of things, and like, the younger generations probably won't realize like how close the Scottish League was to the rest of the English Football League. And there's always talks about Rangers and Celtic pulling away from that, especially and even when it was more competitive. So like when Hearts were up there, and not like we know them now, but like Kilmarnock and Hibernian, like it, like the football manager team. I know they never made it like mainstay and they weren't there for long after he passed away. But Gretna, that everybody
Oh
wanted
yeah,
to be
yeah.
Gretna Green on Championship Manager, but like it did have a pull, and it's just like I don't know, like if I've been I was looking it up like before we recorded the pod and tried to like highlight some big names in or from Scottish football, and like I've got an 11 players that we can run through, which
Oh
you
nice.
think of as well. What do you reckon? We should can
Yeah,
I dive
yeah,
into that
yeah.
straight
Go
away?
for it, mate. Yeah, yeah. Because I think there's tons of players that you could think of, but if you've got an 11, I think yeah, one of the ones I was going to touch on as well that signed that probably many people don't know that they probably thought, oh yeah, he just played for Leeds. Was Mark Viduka. He actually signed for
Yeah.
Celtic before coming over this way before going to the Premier League as well. It's wild that some of these players that you think, well, they just appeared in the Premier League at some point. A lot of them came
Mm.
from Scottish football via Scottish football, or they were like tearing up Scottish football. And then, like you have to say as well, it was a lot more competitive and and you see this a lot in the like maybe early rounds of European competitions in the 90s, early 2000s, and also pre-season friendlies. They played a lot Celtic and Rangers played a lot against like English
Mm,
clubs, so Spurs, Man United, Liverpool, things like this, and it was close matches, and you always knew it
mm,
was going to be a battle and a close game. But I don't
mm.
think that's really how it is now. But we'll come on to that anyway. But yeah, do you want to
Like
do your
in
11?
Well, it's kind of split, so I'm not going to give you like the best 11, and I'm not saying this is my best 11. It's just players in those kind of positions in a 4-4-2 formation.
Yeah, it's fair enough.
Like I would say you've got, and I'm not being biased towards Celtic or Rangers or any of the other teams in this, but like predominantly because they're the biggest clubs in there, obviously they're going to have the more recognised players. So there's other people outside of it, but in goal you could have like, I'm trying to think of change it into Scottish League as well. I would say you've got Andy Gorham, you've got McGregor because he's just been there for God knows how long playing football in Scotland.
Yeah,
Craig Gordon, who
yeah.
was like a wonder kid for coming through from Hearts, and it was Celtic as well, didn't he? And then played for Sunderland for a period of time, and he was amazing. He was really, really good. He was just crippled by injury. But then you like look at the defenders. So I've talked about.
I'll give you one more
Um,
goalkeeper, shall I, as well?
Go on, go on, go on.
Anthony Amy.
Ah, Niemi.
Play for
He's,
Hearts.
he's,
Yeah.
he's finished, isn't he?
Yeah,
Have you
he's
seen that
finished.
clip before? He's finished. Why has he never been picked for Celtic? He's finished. He's not finished. he's only
He was playing for
he's
Hearts, that's why.
finished. And Niemi as well. Where did he go? Sutton. He played for Sutton, didn't he, for a while?
Charlton,
The
Southampton. Yeah,
Charlton.
Southampton. Yeah.
Yeah. But then you've
Was it
got
Charlton?
like
Oh, Fulham, Southampton. Yeah, that was it.
Fulham, Southampton. But then you've got McNamara, great player. Goff. Um, you, although there's probably other legends in there, like what's his name? Is it Alberti? He had like really long hair for Rangers. I can't. I'll have to think of his name. But then if you think of like exports from the game, Van Dijk, like he took the mick out of the Scottish League. I remember taking free
Oh yeah.
kicks from like in between the halfway line, the 18-yard box, and rifling into the top corner. It's like, oh, mate, you need to settle down.
It's Lorenzo Amoruso, if that's what you're kind of thinking of.
Amaruso,
Yeah, yeah.
Amaruso. I remember him. He
Fiorentina.
was in what's going on. He springs to mind in the shirt that you've got on behind.
Yeah, he was
Then you've got
captain of Fiorentina and he decided to move to Rangers.
Van
Following
Bronckhorst.
interest from Man United. So Man United wanted him and he chose to sign for Rangers.
I think he's probably one of the players that signed that started the demise of Rangers overspending. But then Giovanni Van Bronckhorst,
Oh yeah.
Dutch international, massive player. Then you've got like Gascoigne, Laudrup. This is where it starts getting tricky because then you've got like
Gattuso. Yeah.
Gattuso, Arteta. But then you look at like club legends as well. So like Brown, Ferguson, De Boer. I can never say it first time. The McNamara,
Mm-hmm.
Ian McGee. Like I'm trying to think of more, but then strikers it gets like Ali McCoist's like gotta be in there. Henrik Larsson has
Oh
to be
yeah.
in there. Like they're like really, really good players. And I just think like, and that's just like off the cuff of what I've been looking at. There's probably other massive amounts of legends, like you said, Paulo Di Canio in there. So I'm not necessarily just saying from. I suppose you could the argument would be, and people's listening to this and the outrage about it, going, "Oh no, like
Mario
Arteta
Reina.
wasn't like, yeah, well, what a player,
Andrei Kanchelskis.
yeah, that's it." But the argument is were they a legend, like were they as good as they were remembered for at that period of time? Because I think Gattuso, although he's a midfielder, I'm pretty sure he was playing like right back. He played like full back for them when he came over here. But still, like the level of players that they've seen in that league,
Yeah,
and
you have to think though. This is Gattuso before he was at Milan. Like
mm,
he signed and actively wanted to move away from Italy to come to Rangers, which shows you the sort of pulling power there, doesn't it?
oh yeah, well that's the thing. We both agree on the fact that like it had a massive pull. Like I'm looking now, so you had like uh Stilian Petrov as well. He was massive, obviously really good player for Aston Villa. But looking through it, there's just so many. The list goes on and on and on of players, and it makes you wonder. Like
What happened?
looking through the list here,
Yeah,
I like
It's that
Just how did
the one you probably remember as well is that 2000-2001 Rangers. So you got Peter Lovenkrands, Fernando Rickson, Ronald De Boer, Torre
Ronald?
Andre Flo, like Fabrice Fernandez even.
It's just it just makes you think like Arthur. Like well, I've already said, but Arthur Newman, great player. But it's just you look at it and then you think like I'm going into it now, and I just think like where do you think it started to go wrong? Do you think it's just because clubs started overspending to kind of compete at that level
I
and
don't think
compete
it was
with?
necessarily overspending. I think it was more around probably it must have been something to do with the money in Scottish football because obviously in 80s maybe early 90s or whatever Scottish football and English football is quite level. I'd say is probably quite similar. You see a lot of Scottish players coming down and playing in first division teams or Premier League teams and actively competing for first team places
Mm,
from those divisions. They would sign from like I don't know Aberdeen, Rangers, Celtic, those sort of teams, and they would actively compete. And then vice versa, they would take players and take them into their leagues. They were competitive in European competitions. The thing with the Premier League, I think, is the English Premier League. I think is an adverse effect on the Scottish Premier League in some way or another because of proximity, and I think that
mm,
because of the coexistence relationship it's always had, like historically, always had like a sort of relationship to one another because of how close they are. I think with the Premier League getting us a ton of money from all these TV deals and everything like this, and then the Scottish League not quite getting there, not having what the Premier League had, and then trying to compete. And then you think Rangers went out of business. That was one thing. They had to start again, didn't they?
mm,
And like it all culminated to that where they're trying to compete, but they just can't compete with the money because it isn't in Scottish football. And there was a few attempts to try and emulate the Premier League in Scottish football with like Setanta Sports,
mm.
the ITV digital stuff. Like they tried to sort of put big money in Scottish football, but I think because of I don't think it was the quality. I think was there in the 90s, and I think that's why the pool was there, and it could have gone on the same trajectory as English football. But the selling point was just Celtic and Rangers, I think, and that was the one of the issues maybe. Like the other teams, because they didn't get enough money and they couldn't compete, I think maybe because it wasn't such a competitive league system as well, because it only had 12 teams in the top flight.
Mm.
There wasn't as many relegation places. There was this weird split in the middle as well that no one particularly understood or liked. So because if you were
Teams playing
finishing
each other quite a few times as
teams
well.
playing each other four times a season, and like you could finish seventh and have more points than the team in sixth, which yeah
Mm.
is wild. But it's like so it's I yeah I think there's a culmination of things. I think yeah it's a shame, but then I think yeah it's slowly over time. I think it must have come to a point, especially with the Celtic and Rangers thing, that we can't compete with the English league anymore. We have to compete with leagues at our level, and like the leagues at their level are probably you think of the Scandinavian ones, you think of
Mm.
like maybe Austria, Switzerland, those sort of leagues, and they're all similar sizes, aren't they? You have to think they're like 12 to 14 teams in the top divisions. They're all similar amount of money that they're getting in and going into one of those models, and they just can't compete with the juggernaut that is the English league that's right next to them, and it's a shame really because it
Do
could
you
have gone
think
in a similar direction.
like if where would you say today the Scottish like the SPL? Well, not maybe not just limiting it to the Scottish Premier League in terms of Scottish football. Like, what would you think it's compared to? Like, what's a comparison in terms of maybe league standards, in terms of financial backing, fans, quality?
Well, you have to look at
What would you
it.
like it to?
Yeah, like I've said, you have to liken it to those like the Norwegian, Danish, like those sort of divisions.
You really think it's like as close to that?
Mm, in a way, because you have to think of the teams that there are top teams in that league that are competitive. I know Copenhagen have probably blown out of the park this
Mm,
season and been very good in European competitions, but like a Celtic or Rangers could surprise people and do that. But then you have to think other teams in Denmark at the bottom of the league, are they as good as, I don't know, St Johnston? Probably about the same. Like
mm,
the real difference between there's just a huge gulf between the top two teams, the next four teams, and then the rest, which is
mm,
wild because like you think Celtic and Rangers are arguably, if you look at their squad lists, they're arguably what, championship teams at best.
mm.
Um, Lower end Premier League teams, sort of top half championship teams. I would say Sunderland would probably compete quite well against Celtic or Rangers. Would you say that
Um, maybe.
realistically? Like if you look at their team, like their squad lists, maybe a bit more. Leicester would comfortably beat both of them, I would have thought. But then
Yeah.
you think like you have to think of where that standard is. But then you look at teams that are near like that bottom end of the league, like you got your Livingstons and like Aberdeens, and Aberdeen shouldn't
Mm.
be there, but like St Johnston and things like this,
St.
and
Mirren's and
like
stuff.
St Mirren, and essentially they're well-run League One clubs, aren't they? They got a community base, similar sort of
I,
attendances, like that sort of thing.
I think one thing that gets probably a little bit overlooked is the geographical side of it as well, because obviously I know in the English football league you can travel long distances and stuff, but I also think like the climate, not that it's like much different to what we get in England, but I just think because of some of the teams are playing in the temperatures where they are, there's artificial pitches, and I think as a professional footballer that'll have something
Yeah,
where like the kind of the continuity of level, because like you could go for, I would pretty much say most of maybe down to halfway League One, you would probably have like undersoil heating as a standard, and up it'll be like a decent
yeah,
level pitch.
yeah.
Whereas up there, it's like some of the teams are just, it's shocking. Like
Well,
some of the pitches are shocking.
you have to think about it as well. This is where I compare it to like the Scandinavian leagues, because a lot of them have artificial pitches because of the climate and things like that as well.
Hmm.
They're all similar sizes, similar attendances. But also with Scottish football, you have to remember like it's called the Scottish Professional Football League. Yet the top the top division's professional. Probably about 8 of the second division are professional. 3 in the third division or League One, whatever they call it now, because they've just copied English model. Because I think they're still trying to copy England. Um, 3 of those are professional, and the rest are semi-pro. Like you've got semi-pro teams in the second division, which is
That is.
which is mad. Like,
Mm,
and that shows with the attendances as well. So the regular attendances at like Scottish League Two games, you're thinking what, under 1,000. You're what, 500 to 800 people maybe if you're lucky. If it's cold, about 200, which is wild for a fourth division. But then maybe one thing for Scotland should be to make it more competitive is increase the league size of the top division to include all professional clubs.
mm,
Have a second division with aspiring professional clubs, so ones that want to be in the top division and can financially compete with those ones that are professional. So your likes of, I don't know, Albion Rovers, those sort of teams that are competing as semi-professional teams in the Scottish Championship, or and then have regionalised below that,
mm,
like a lot of, you look at the model of like Sweden, Norway, even Switzerland, Austria, they have a top 2 national divisions and then regionalised football after that. Having 4 national divisions for the size of Scotland just doesn't make sense, in my opinion. And that also means that you're going to have less games or more games playing the same team over and over and over again, which
mm,
means all these teams in the lower divisions are not really getting enough football. They're not really experienced enough football. They're just stagnant. Then
mm,
there's no, like, if I said to you, "Oh, do you want to go and watch Clyde play Bonnie Rig Rose for the fourth time this season?"
Mm.
and they played each other for 4 times for the last 10 years in the
I
same
suppose.
division, there's no selling point, is there?
Nah, nah. They're in the same. It's
But then
harder.
one of those teams might want to jump up and progress and push themselves and get into the Scottish Premier League. But it's so difficult. Like you have to sort of win the division or get lucky in a playoff 3 times to get into the top division and then still have to have a playoff against second from bottom. It's sort of a
Mm.
bottleneck. Whereas if you made it bigger, larger divisions, regionalised, and like the professional teams, you had to be professional to be in the top division, let's say, and then sort of like a league of like, I don't know, you could call it not the championship, but sort of like, I don't know, it's like a division of like a progressive division, like of teams who want to sort of progress higher. Because there's teams that just want to play football and be stagnant and they're quite happy to be in League Two. I don't think they're bothered. Like,
Yeah, they know the means.
yeah,
So the only thing I would say then is just to kind of bring us full circle
yeah.
is, do you think that the Scottish Premier League could have what's its way back into maybe bringing the likes of a Henrik Larsson back? Do you think those days are dead? Do you think you'll ever see that again? Or do you think there's hope?
I don't think you'll see that again. Not the way it
Yes.
is, and not the way the football's being run in that country at the moment. I don't think you'll see that again. I think you might see a young player sign for a Rangers or Celtic that turns into potentially a Henrik Larsson, but they'll never be at their pomp in that division, if that makes sense.
Mm. Nah, I'd agree. And there we are.
Yeah,
Scottish football.
Scottish
The
football.
the highs and lows of Scottish football. I know where pinpoints. I think I know where I can pinpoint it to. As soon as Scott's Corner was off the airways, downhill,
Yeah, exactly.
done. Childhood ruined as well
Basically,
as an entire football pyramid.
basically, Sky decided when Scottish football ceased to exist.
Likely story. And here we are, mate. So let's go for a quick break again, and then I'm gonna ask you a question and pose it to our audience. How about that?
Yeah, and we'll preview a couple of the games for the weekend, shall we?
As always.
Nice. And we're back from that quick short break.
Fantastic. So
Fantastic.
here we are. It's question time. Boom, boom, boom. Where
Indeed.
we ask one question and one question alone. And it's this week. I'm posing the question to you, Matt, and our listenership. So I've went with a very open question, which is, which country plays the best style of football, in your humble opinion?
Wow. As in national team or league?
League. So we've
So,
touched on league football. So which
which
league
league is
or
the
which?
most exciting with the most exciting
Yeah.
style of football? Fair enough.
Hmm.
Um, it's a tough one though because you've got
That's why I'm
differences.
asking it.
Yeah, I know, and our viewers are probably gonna just jump on the Premier League bandwagon, aren't they?
Maybe.
I quite like the German league personally. You got a
For,
lot.
for, you,
You got
you
a
think
lot.
that's the best style of play? Because that's the thing. I'm not just talking about competitiveness. I'm talking about best
But
style.
then it isn't competitive. You think of
Mm.
Bayern Munich just win it every year, but no, it's fast paced. It's aggressive. It's similar sort of. I think it helps probably like I'm getting mixed up with style of play. A lot of the progressive managers have come out of Germany as well and thrown out in the rest of the world, and they've been like their style of football I quite enjoy, which is that sort of high press, high tempo, batter people, score more goals than you, and then we'll try and that sort of thing. I think Kevin Keegan would have done quite well in the German league. It's probably where he got all his when he played there. It was probably where he got all his stuff from. But yeah,
Hmm.
I don't know, but yeah, I like that. And the Premier League obviously is like similar in the fact that it's quite high tempo, high press, but it's I feel like the diversity in styles in the Premier League is wild compared to a lot of other divisions.
Hmm.
Like the Premier League has a lot of diversity in style. Could you pinpoint a style for the Premier League? I don't think you could.
No, maybe not. But I would just think if you think of English football versus German football, I definitely think I think there's more. I think anywhere Pep Guardiola's been, he's always kind of left a little stink of himself
Hmm.
in trying to play tiki taka football and all that
Yeah.
nonsense. But I think if the core of the countries, I'd say I couldn't really say the kind of French. I think Italian. It's Italian's a brand of football, like an Italian league and Italian style of football. I really like that. I think I,
You like
but I wouldn't.
you
I
like
like Italian style of football in that kind of low defensive block and tentative kind of because I think it's a bit like, and some people would say it's boring, but then it's good because then it springs into action. So as soon as you get into their half, it's kind of like right now we press. But personally, I don't. I I would say English football is a mixture and probably a bit more. I would say aggressive because it's not just technical football. It's like long ball in there. Like I
mm.
can't remember many French teams playing Route One, so I would say that's a bit of a dynamic one in England. But I would personally agree with you. I think the best brand of football is the Bundesliga, and I think it's probably seen because it's starting to grow in terms of like viewership, and it's broadcast a lot more than it probably used to be. It's similar like with like Italian football used to be on like ITV and stuff
Yeah.
back when we were growing up. Like I would probably say the German league because I would say outside of Bayern Munich, it's probably the most competitive league. Because if you look at Spain and the brand of football they play, I suppose that I'm answering slightly skewed to the question being like, what's the best style of football played in the countries? But I would have to agree with you just because I think in Germany it is more aggressive. It is fast paced, and I would probably say it is one, if not the most competitive, which makes it more exciting in terms of style because they've got to
Yeah.
be quite clever in how they play.
Yeah, I agree with that. That's the one thing I was going to say as well is like maybe not touch on style, but it sort of lends to that in a sense is that the Bundesliga is like a hotbed of like talent as well. Like it's like got so many young talented players there across all the
Mm.
teams. They're not all in one team like Chelsea, but like they're all they're all spread across a lot of the teams, and they're all playing this aggressive, fast-paced football that's like exciting to watch. Like I find it really
Mm.
exciting watching the German league, and then it also helps that the fan culture there is massive as well, and it makes the
Yeah,
games a lot more like do or die, really. Like every single one.
yeah,
If you watch like Mainz versus Stuttgart or something, and then you'll be like, "Fuck me, this is good." Like,
yeah.
you'll be like, but then if you watch Sheffield United versus Burnley, would you say the same thing?
Mm. But it's hyped up. That's the only thing is the Premier
Yeah.
League's a hype machine. That's all
It
that
is a
is.
hype machine, and I think that's media that's done that. But then the German
Mm.
league is sort of getting there. But then I think also with their like 50+1 model thing they do with the fans must
Yeah.
own 51% of the club and whatever, and no
Hmm.
investors can come in, and they don't want that. They keep it affordable for everyone. They play a really exciting style of football. You can't. There's what's not to like about the German league apart from Bayern Munich winning it every year. But then this
Well,
year they've got arguably one of the best performances ever by a football club, like in Bayer Leverkusen. So yeah,
just winning, just refusing to lose.
exactly, and that's the one way to beat Bayern Munich, I suppose, isn't it? Refusing to lose.
I mean, if you're going to do it, that's probably the best way to do it. And but yeah, I would say my answer would be German football, because even when you drop into it and you've got like your Fortuna Dusseldorf and stuff who are competitive, I still think like you've got good, big, recognised German clubs in the division below and who can make an impact as they get promoted. I think the German league's probably the best brand of football / style of football. So there you go. And if you disagree with us, please tweet us and tell us
What
which
wankers.
country plays the best style of football in terms of league,
Yeah,
not
just
not
throw something
the
out there
nation.
if you might completely disagree with us and go, no, it's not even a European league, and it's actually, I don't know, the Australian league.
Mm. But there you
Come
go.
up with a good
So
argument, but yeah.
into the previews, mate. I'm going to put you on the spot. And have you got any games that you want to highlight as you go into a massive weekend of
Massive
league football?
weekend of league football. Um,
Mm.
I'm going to touch on my team because obviously we won at the weekend.
Did you?
Yep.
I didn't notice. I did notice.
But so did everyone around us, which meant we really didn't get anything. But we're playing Rotherham at the weekend, so I think that's quite a big game. We win that, we're level on points with Millwall, QPR, 1 point behind Huddersfield. I think this is the point where we can and I think beating Bristol City was quite good.
Oh yeah, they've been on a bit of a
And
run.
it's that man again as well,
I know. How do you say his name?
Ugbo. Yeah,
Ugbo,
yeah,
the forgotten man.
Ike
And he's just
Ugbo.
on fire.
Absolutely on fire. Like he was at Cardiff before. Like they ended. Like it's wild. Like that he didn't do anything. He's on loan from Troyes in France. He was at Cardiff. He scored 4 goals in 20 matches on loan. They cancelled his loan, sent him to us. He scored 5 in 7. Obviously, it works, but maybe he just fits in with our system and our style. So I don't know. But yeah, he's been on fire. Canadian fella. But yeah, that's one game I'd like to pinpoint. It's quite an important one for us, me personally.
Right, and tell you what, we'll change the preview into our clubs and who we've got, because we'll always remember we've got Norwich this week, and I'm not looking forward to it.
Norwich are starting
We
to creep back up the table a little bit, aren't they, as well?
Yeah, they're just horrible fuckers. They'll never have a good time at Norwich. I mean, apart from Alan Partridge, who else has a good time?
No one really.
But I just look at it and I just think we've lost 3 on the spin now. We were dross against Swansea and we played at home. We've been bad for a while now. Well out of form, well out of confidence, and fully expect another L on the road. So there you go. There's a preview for you. How'd you like that?
Sounds fantastic, mate. Do we want to touch? Let's touch on some of the games that we mentioned last week, just to see what the results were. A few of the ones that we said. I think you mentioned, which ones did you mention in the end? You mentioned a couple out of England.
I can't remember now because what happened was I was all giddy and joyous because we had just sacked Michael Beale. So I was just focused on getting 3 points against Swansea. One that I did point out was Borough and Plymouth, and Plymouth got a result 2-0, which I was quite shocked at. I didn't expect that to happen. I didn't point this out, but there was a massive result in fact that Millwall beat Southampton, who have had a bit of a odd run in, and one that we did talk about, Blackpool Bolton, which descended into chaos in fans with a lifelong Blackpool fan getting beat up by his own fans. I think it was either a lifelong Bolton fan or a lifelong Blackpool fan. He was a bit of a Twitter personality or ex personality, and he I don't know the full story, but basically he was in the stand and was just because he didn't like jump up and shout and sing loads, that the fans kind of started to think he was a Bolton fan or vice versa, and he got cracked and got escorted out of the stadium. But he was a lifelong Blackpool fan, I think,
Oh,
and
crikey.
Blackpool won 4-1. So that was a
Big
result for
result.
them. and I can't remember some of the other ones. My mind's turned to mush.
Yeah, some of the ones that I pointed out across Europe. Rennes drew with PSG. It was 1-1. Rennes
Oh,
were the team
really?
in form. So were PSG, and they drew. So that was an interesting one there. Brest won 3-0 again, as always.
I remember Brest.
Brest love a good win. Um, Bayern Munich did beat Leipzig, but the thing we have to sort of mention about Bayern Munich is we actually called this last week, didn't we?
Hot football takes, isn't it?
We called last Tuesday that Tuchel will either get sacked if he doesn't win that game, or he will walk at the end of the season. And it was announced last Wednesday was it, that he was
Mm-hmm.
walking at the end of the season.
Gone.
We knew this beforehand.
We did. We've got the ins to the Bundesliga and called the fact that they were going to make a move for Xavi Alonso as well, because they're
Yep.
probably panicked by the fact that he's likely going to go to Liverpool.
Yeah, exactly. And then they did beat Leipzig. Stuttgart drew, so Stuttgart are now 5 points behind them. 6 points behind them. They're 8 points behind Bayer Leverkusen still, because Bayer Leverkusen are like a juggernaut this year. So, I mean, that was that. In terms of in Serie A, there was AC Milan, Atalanta, so that was third versus fourth at the time. That was 1-1. Bologna did manage to pick up points though, so they are now fourth, which is interesting. They've won 5 games in a row.
There we go.
Bologna in Champions League football. Other things we were looking at maybe Almeria did not get their first win of the season. They were playing Atletico Madrid, and I know you said like Atletico Madrid are massive bottle jobs. It was 2-2, so like they did draw with Atletico Madrid there. So
What
yeah,
did I tell you?
you called that one in a sense as well, didn't you? So yeah,
Told you, man. Told you.
still
Just
9 draws
hot.
for Almeria. They still haven't won.
Yeah. It's a big result, that though, to be fair to them, isn't it,
It is a
really?
big result. I mean, Atletico Madrid, though. I mean, yeah, they're not. They're still fourth, but they're sort of, apart from smashing Las Palmas 5-0 out of nowhere, they've it's bad. Almeria's last 3 matches, they've got 0-0 with Bilbao, 1-1 with Granada, and then 2-2 with Atletico Madrid. Like, Bilbao are 5th, Atletico Madrid are 4th. They're picking up points against the top couple
They're
of
getting
teams.
smashed off the teams around.
Smashed off, like beaten up by Mallorca.
Dear God. Well, mate, we've come to another end of an episode, so here we are.
We have
And as always, thanks to everybody for listening. Thank you for your time today,
yeah,
Matt. It's been a pleasure,
and you, mate.
and I'm sure our latest football takes will be reviewed next week, where we reveal the rebirth of the Scottish football pyramid.
Yeah. So all that talk that I've said about restructuring, they need a TV deal, everything like that. We record this on a Tuesday, so if tomorrow it gets announced that Scottish Football League is having a revamp and they're getting loads of money into it through a lucrative TV deal with like beIN Sports or something like this, then yeah, you heard it here first.
Well, thanks very much, guys. Thanks for listening,
Right.
and all the best.
Take it easy, guys.
See you
See
soon.
ya.